afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on securing your workforce access with the Microsoft Entra Suite. My name is Akila, and I'm an Associate Product Marketing Manager here at Sherweb, and I'll be your host for today. Before we dive in, I'd like to cover a couple of housekeeping items. First, this session is being recorded, and you'll receive a link to the recording along with the slides after the webinar. Second, we do have a Q&A window as well as a chat. Please feel free to drop your questions in there during the presentation, and we'll try to address them as we go. We'll also have a Q&A session at the end where we can answer your questions. And lastly, at the end of the webinar, there will be a short survey. We appreciate if you could take a moment to complete it so that we can hear your feedback and thoughts. So on to today's session. Today we're joined by Meryl Fernando and Roddy Bergeron. Meryl is a product manager at Microsoft on the Microsoft Entra team. Meryl is based in Melbourne, Australia, and he helps some of Microsoft's largest customers deploy Entra in their organization. And Roddy is Sherweb's resident cybersecurity fellow. He brings over 20 years of experience in accounting, government work, and building MSPs managed services. He has developed comprehensive cybersecurity programs, vCISO services, and GRC lines of business. At Sherweb, Roddy assists partners in enhancing and growing their security programs to be more effective and profitable. With that, let's get started. So quickly, the agenda. So for today, we will go over securing your workforce access with the Microsoft Entra Suite, identity-centric secure access service edge solution, ensure least privileged access, uniformly govern access to on-premises and cloud resources, improve the user experience, and Microsoft Entra Suite pricing. Before I hand it over to Meryl, I do want to share that Sherweb has a range of internal expertise from pre-sales and post-sales architects to post-sales support and different trainings and educational opportunities. If you're interested in any of these, please reach out to your account manager or sales representative at any time, and they'll be sure to facilitate these conversations for you. And with that, I'll hand it over to Meryl.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So let me just switch over to my screen to share.
Hey guys, I was able to get here.
Awesome. While we wait to share, Jason, you wanna introduce yourself and say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I was just I'm doing a little bit of road rage traveling in the last couple of days. I'm Jason Lambert. I support all things Azure from an enablement perspective here at Sherweb, and I'm super thrilled that Merle was able to make some time to reach out to us today. As we're moving forward, if you need any help around deployment services, I would say pre-sales support for Entra ID and everything that you're trying to do, as well as deployment services. As Akila pointed out in the last slide, we're here to help you. We got your back. Reach out to your account manager, and they'll connect you with your Azure team, and let's rock and roll. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Jason. Okay, folks. So my name is Meryl, and thank you for your time here to join in today and listen in on and learn about all things Microsoft Entra Suite. So today I'm going to walk you through what the Entra Suite is. We're going to look at how it can simplify the customer's zero trust architecture, which makes life very easy for them and for the day-to-day defenders. And we'll also look at how it improves the user experience, which will make people in the organization happier and more productive. Right? So as we all know, the rise in cloud, we have more distributed workloads, and there are SaaS applications that make it easier for all of the employees to work from anywhere, connect from any device, share, collaborate online. And now we have generative AI with ChatGPT, Copilot, and all like the multiple types of AI engines, apps, and websites available. And they're reshaping the way people work, right? Collaborate, creating even more access points. There are like workload identities and access permissions that are being created. So for all of us as defenders of our organization, this world demands a new security approach, moving beyond the traditional security technologies that we are used to, right? And in this world, the number of identities and endpoints that has proliferated is dramatically increasing the attack surface. So just think about this for a second, right? Today, there are more than 300 billion passwords in use by humans and machines, right? And it's no surprise that Microsoft's research indicates that employees are accessing more than all these 15,000 odd applications in the average enterprise. So we are having passwords increasing. We have applications that people access in terms of service principals, etc., increasing, and that makes identity the most popular attack vector in across all of the orgs. If you hear of any major compromise, you'll always notice that it starts with identity, right? Someone gets phished, someone gets their password stolen with password spray attack, and that's how the attacker comes in, because identity is the gateway into the rest of the world, right? And people just come in through the front door, which is a lot more easier when you are not really set up to be protected. So password attacks, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and on this slide with token replay attacks, like I remember a few years ago, we maybe would encounter at our MSP maybe one token replay attack per year, but again, a lot more prolific, right? Like as MFA becomes more common, attackers are looking for ways to get on MFA. So like token replay attacks, and later on we're going to talk about continuous evaluation, conditional access policies, and other things that can help with those token replay attacks. Correct?
Yes, yeah. So as you said, right, as we improve MFA and security and even phishing resistant, we move to that. Then the attackers are now, pivoting to token replay. It's still small at the moment. So what they can do is just steal your token with malware on the device or some other way. They just steal the token and they replay it in a remote place. So we've seen at Microsoft right now, it's only like 5% of the attack vector. It's still 90% is more MFA and other password spray attacks, but it's growing. So in the last year, it's doubled, like 111% increase year over year. Based on our stats, we've seen 147,000 token replay attacks just this year, right? So it's exponentially growing because attackers have to pivot now as we move to more secure file, which is good. We're making it harder for them, right? We're making life harder for them.
Yeah.
So the Microsoft Entra Suite is a comprehensive family of products that secure access for any identity from anywhere to any app or resource, right? Whether it's on-prem or across the cloud, whether it's your own employees, your customers, whether it's partners accessing, or even if it's digital workloads, right? We're all moving to the cloud with AWS, GCP, Azure, and you need a way to have visibility over them and protect them. And the access requests are now coming from all over the place, right? So the neat thing we see is that you can adopt Microsoft Entra in stages as an organization transforms the access. They can go through different levels of maturity. So you start with the first line of defense in securing and managing identities, right? So for us, this is like the foundational things we do, like MFA, conditional access or dynamic access policies. And then the next step is to secure and extend the access using access controls for your employees, right? How do you govern access for your employees to the applications that they have? After you secure the employees, you go into securing your partners and customers and those identities. And then finally, you look into securing access from anywhere in the cloud, right? So if we look at how this is overlaid, just switch that over. Right. So if you map that into the Entra product group of families, you have the basic, you start with zero trust access controls, which many of your customers and folks would have been using, which is with Entra ID, conditional access, MFA to protect and secure those identities. And next you move to the Entra Suite for access, for covering all of the employee secure access. Once the employees are secured, you look at securing your customers with Entra External ID that we just launched last year. And finally, you have this proliferation of identities across the cloud. We call them non-human identities, right? And how do you secure access for non-human identities? We have workload ID for that and permissions management for all of the cloud-related capabilities. Now, what we're going to focus on today is on securing access to employees, right? So I just want to lay out like what Entra has as a product family, and then with Entra Suite, we're going to focus on just the employee access today.
Hey, Merle, real quick. I know Azure went from, Azure ID to Entra Suite. Is there like any color that you can share with the attendees as to like the reasoning behind the transition from what was to what is?
Yes, yeah. So previously we would just call Azure AD, right? And everyone knew Azure. It was born that way. We created Azure AD when we stood up Azure. We needed a cloud-based identity provider, and that's how Azure AD started life. But over time, this was back in 2012, 2010 when it first was created. Over time, we've expanded, and it's not just Azure. We cover identity for everything from Microsoft 365 to third-party applications, and now with the Entra Suite, we're not just doing identity, we're doing a lot more, and what we're going to cover today. So the name Azure AD was holding things back. A lot of people thought Azure AD was related to Azure only, and you would use Azure AD for just only if you had Azure as a customer, or only if you had Microsoft 365. So that's one of the biggest reasons behind the whole rebranding of the change from Azure AD to Entra and this whole Entra Suite, right? It's not just a directory with a list of users and apps. It's a more holistic solution, and we will be learning about that today.
Yeah, and I think like from the MSP side, right? Like they saw Azure ID or Azure AD, and they thought the only thing you do with it was identity management. But as we're going to learn today, there's a lot more access management pieces built into it, especially access management outside of the Microsoft ecosystem, right? We start talking about private internet access or private access and internet access. Like you're starting to control resources from that Entra ID to or starting to control access to Entra IDs for resources outside of the Microsoft environment. So like it helps with the rebrand so that people understand that's not just single sign-on is what you get with that ID, right? It's a lot more security access controls you get around to it as well.
Exactly, and a lot of vendors sell zero trust solutions. We believe Entra Suite is like the only complete zero trust user access solution for employees, right? And I'll walk through and say why we can justify with that, because there's no other product in the market that has this breadth of coverage, which ties in identity and network access and ties it all together in a very simple solution. You don't need to put together this complex piecemeal of different solutions, tie them together, and have a complex thing. It's really easy for small customers to deploy and manage and maintain, because it's just a single pane that they need to use. So the Entra Suite starts with private access. Private access can replace legacy VPNs, and it extends MFA and conditional access to all resources, right? Entra historically has been just only cloud and things you have on the internet and web applications. If you had to secure your on-prem legacy app or a desktop application, you couldn't do that with Entra ID before. Private access now enables all of that, right? So and it's built in. It's a cloud VPN, so you can get rid of all this legacy on-prem servers and all of that infrastructure that customers have. Then we have the Entra Internet Access. Now it is an identity-centric secure web gateway. Normally, this is for accessing when your employees access web applications over the internet. You need a way to apply web filters and protect against threats and malware that people might download and so on. With Entra, we are bringing identity into the mix where you can have a lot more control over who can access what, and we'll dive into that as well. Next, we have ID governance, which is a complete identity least privilege access solution where you can decide who has access to what, right? Not everyone needs access to the HR admin sites or finance sites, and using ID governance, you can ensure that there is least privilege. When people join, when they move between teams in the organization, that you're removing access. And it becomes really important in this new Copilot and ChatGPT era, because people can now more easily access solutions, and ChatGPT can pull everything and Copilot can pull all the information. And if you don't have least privilege set up properly, you'll find that there's, all of your data is being leaked, and people might be getting access to HR data, which they shouldn't have, just by asking questions from Copilot.
Or in the event of like an account compromise, say account does get compromised, you know exactly what people have access to because now it's auditable and you know that what an attacker could get access to or what. So like if an attacker has more access through that user account than what they should have, you've got a huge problem on your hands. So this helps limit that scope of an incident too when something bad actually does happen, right?
Absolutely, exactly. And then we have Entra ID protection. This is like sort of a machine learning intelligent system that we have. It works in real time, does a risk assessment for every sign-in that a person accesses. It assesses that and decides whether they should continue on or not. So it's a continuously monitoring system in the backend and protects your identities. And finally, we have verified ID, and that makes it possible to verify people's identity in a privacy respecting way, right? So when someone calls a help desk, how do you know that it's that person without just asking them, some basic questions which they might be able to answer? So with Entra Suite, when a customer gets Entra Suite, they get all of this together, bundled together in one simple solution that can be deployed, and it gives them all of these capabilities in one way, right? So we've gone from just only doing identity to a complete zero trust solution with Entra Suite, right? And really, there's no other sort of a single vendor that provides all of this together in one simple solution, right? You'll need to do a lot more complex things if you want something like this working together. And yet you won't be able to do some of the things that I'm going to show how you can do those with Entra.
Yeah, I think Entra verified ID, right? Like, so we're seeing more and more attacks too, where attackers are impersonating people during like job interview processes. So they're stealing identities, they're claiming to be someone else. You ship them a trusted device with an actual user login, and then if they've got access to your network because you think you verified the person on the other end, but they're actually malicious. Like we've seen multiple. I think it was like KnowBe4 or somebody. They released a blog post over the summer that was essentially that. Like they hired a North Korean hacker by accident because they used, I think, AI to generate a government ID photo. Yes. They stole somebody's identity, et cetera, and were able to get access to their network.
Yeah, and this is, sorry, Merle, I was just going to say this is far beyond, getting more into security around Microsoft Cloud, but I believe Microsoft has also kind of put a foot in the ground and said, hey, if you're not doing MFA, if you're not setting up MFA, we're going to start enforcing, MFA on all the, not even the subscriptions, but the tenants, because, if you don't have MFA set up as a baseline, Microsoft's not going to be responsible for any bad actors within your subscription. So please, if you have customers that don't have MFA set up as a baseline, we surely want you to get into everything Microsoft Entra Suite. That's why we got Merlin here today to be able to present it out to you, our value partners. But make sure MFA is on every tenant that you have.
Yes, yeah. So in a few years' time, we'll look back and go like, why didn't we, enforce MFA for everyone, right? That's going to become the baseline. You'll no longer have tenants that don't have MFA. And obviously, as we know, attackers will then pivot to the next thing, which we've raised the bar for everyone. But then attackers will always, go to the most easiest attack vector that they can go to. But when they need to, they'll move to the next bar. And with the zero trust solutions and things we're going to talk today, we are going to look at the next step beyond that, right? So we are not even talking about MFA just in this whole Entra Suite story, because we assume you already have that and you're secure in this way. So while just before I go into the next bit, if there are any questions, feel free to post them here and we'll try to answer while we are doing this, or we can answer them right at the end. Right, so because these 5 products, they work as like one integrated solution, with Entra Suite, it makes it easy to protect your employees' identities, right? So whether they are accessing it from the office, from home, or on the go, we can build all of that in and provide a consistent experience. So this solution has many benefits. right? Just to highlight the top 4, right? We're just looking at the first 4 of them. The first one, you get a unified conditional access, and conditional access has previously been about identity and then devices with the Intune and endpoint, and now we're adding networks. You could do a basic thing with just network IP ranges, but that doesn't really work when your employees are moving the laptop and going into different places. But so how do we ensure that that network that they're part of is secure, or whether you have when customers have like branches, how do you protect that entire branch from that place? We look at least privilege access to any of the apps, including AI models. We look at simplifying user experience from the user. They don't need to jump between different solutions. And finally, we look at how you can reduce your on-prem security solution footprint, right? So you move things to the cloud, it makes it easier to define those. So let's dive into each of these, right? Conditional access, it's the heart of Microsoft Zero Trust architecture, and many organizations have already deployed it, right? So it's a unified access policy engine, which you can use to set up to make real-time decisions, automated decisions based on location, device, and the policies you set up, right? Now, with the conditional access, a critical the customers that we worked with, they liked how you can do all this number of checks, right? Whether the device is compliant or not, whether it's for running the firewall, whether they've turned it off and in real time lose access, and you had risk, right? But often, by most of our organizations that we work with, they adopted a modern networking solution, and that also enforces a different conditional access, right? So you might get a product from a different vendor, and then you have like a networking agent running on the user's desktop, and then that solution is managed by a different team. So you have different security policies now, like one for identity, one for all of the network things, and they have their own firewall rules. And what ended up happening is you would create gaps, right? Someone would go to the security team in the networking and the VPN and create some holes. You will have identity having a different thing, and so it was really hard to know what the holistic policy was for a company, right? And as things evolve, you would create gaps, and it'll be very hard to know where the gaps are over time, right? And this creates a lot of complexity because of that, right? Because of these different layers. So with Entra Suite, the security teams don't have to choose like one policy engine or another, right? You just have one policy engine, which is the unified one with conditional access, and you can use that to cover both identity, endpoint, network all together in sort of one policy engine. And the neat thing that we also do is we've added all these new controls into conditional access as part of the Entra Suite.
Yeah,
right?
I think too, Daryl, like you same point about centralizing it and not looking at gaps. Like a centralized audit log too helps, because I remember my days of doing technical control audits when I worked for a CPA firm, like tracking down everyone's permissions across different financial systems at banks or whatever was tedious to say the best. And trying to audit all of it, we couldn't. We'd sample, and then every year we do different sampling. Like with a centralized policy like this, it's a lot easier to manage, a lot easier to audit too, in the event that you have any kind of government regulation or any kind of business contract compliance that you have to do. That type of centralized ease of management seriously comes into play in the amount of administrative overhead you have as well.
Absolutely. And you can see it all in one pane of glass, especially when you're compromised and you need to really quickly find out what happened, where access went through. You have this single place that you can see all of these logs in together, and you can apply the controls in one place, one team doing all of this. And it's really helpful. Even large enterprises are testing out Entra Suite, because it gives them a single solution, a single vendor that can go across all of this, and they can do unique things, right? So, which is what we are seeing here, right? You can create conditional access policies that tie in identity with compliant network and putting it all together. And now we are able to do continuous access evaluation on even those compliant networks, right? So it extends it where we can immediately revoke access because there is the agent that's running on the user's desktop, and that can apply those conditional access policies that are there. Right? So the compliant network is a new control that you get when you deploy Entra Suite with private access and internet access, and you can say, only allow access from my compliant network, which means you have control wherever the user is, as long as they're coming in from a device that has Entra private access and then Entra internet access running. Right, so the compliant access is a completely new control that we've enabled, and it provides just-in-time access to not just applications that are integrated with Entra, any application the user is trying to access, right? Whether it's a cloud app or some on-prem app, even if it's a legacy application, you can now apply these controls. They're just in time, and you get like continuous access evaluation applied at the edge of your network. So if you look at the two products that extend conditional access, right, to web traffic and on-prem traffic, that's the Entra Internet Access and Entra Private Access, right? So Entra Internet Access is an identity-centric secure web gateway. So you'll see me repeating this phrase, right? Identity-centric secure web gateway that protects employees. And I'll give you a really good example of what we mean by that. And you can now apply conditional access to filter out, malicious, non-compliant content. You can apply to SaaS applications that might not even be integrated with Entra, and you can even apply it to all internet traffic, right? So whether it's the YouTubes or the Facebook and various other applications that are not even enterprise related, you can now apply conditional access policies for those. With private access, it's a complete, again, identity-centric, zero-trust network access solution. So you can replace your traditional VPN, all of those things that you have on-prem or, other solutions that are just a VPN by themselves. The typical VPN flow is you connect, and then you suddenly have access to all of the applications, right? Like you open up all of your servers and you have complete access into the VPN. And there is no granular sort of identity thing applied. Even if you did, like you have a fixed profile for each person, when you create a user, you put them in a profile bucket, and suddenly they have access to all the applications. You can't do real-time sensitive labeling, etc. based access, right? So with private access, you can apply MFA on your 20-year-old app, that you still need for people to access, or on discontinued hardware, it's still running and you need access, but you can now apply the new controls on them, right? And one more product that makes all of this possible is you can use Defender for cloud apps, which is Microsoft CASB solution that's deeply integrated with our Zero Trust solution as well. So you can combine that to provide like a complete edge solution, even if people don't have like an agent, etc. installed on the device. So what's really cool is that with the Entra Suite, you can see the impact of the protections you deploy in the Entra ID protection dashboard, which is like what we're showing here. So this chart shows all the blocked threads that were remediated in real time. So not only like they were blocked and they were remediated, maybe if we saw like a password leak, we got the user to change the password in real time without you not really needing to have security folks that call up the person and walk them through and make them reset the password, right? So it's remediated in real time, so it didn't even become a security incident. And ID protection offers a lot more in terms of the machine learning that we have, etc. And you can do things like require phishing resistant for just sensitive applications, no matter the risk level, right? So you might say if someone is using the companies like Cafe app, require MFA only if it's a high risk sign-in request, right? So you can define policies in that way.
So let me ask you a question. Can we, since there's a way to assign like incidents to users in Defender, if there's an identity incident, can we assign that to like a SOC member to come in and review and make sure that every step's been taken to like remediate? Is that possible?
Not with the Entra Suite from the
Okay.
stock member view. That's more on the Defender side. You
Okay.
should.
I was just curious. Yeah.
Right. So we saw the one of the four. The next one is to ensure least privilege, right? And this is where it really shines when we combine all of the capabilities that Entra Suite gives you, right? So users will access through Entra ID. They'll be accessing all these different applications, right? You have your HR systems, you have your enterprise SaaS applications, and usually there are lots of processors, there are lots of disconnected processors. Sometimes, for cost reasons, people don't add everyone to the HR system, and you have, other systems you use for people who are coming in, who are non-employees, and you add them. So you end up with, different ways identities are created and how they're managed, right? So what happens over time is people end up with access that they shouldn't have, right? And it's really risky when people leave the organization, or even if they within the org they move between different roles. They might be in HR, they move to finance, but they might still have access to the HR data, which they shouldn't have had, right? If you had proper least privilege deployed, right? So with Entra Suite, you can uniformly govern access with the modern cloud HR solution, and we even now integrate with all of the on-prem solutions as well, right?
Yeah.
So
I was going to say, like, what you're talking about, what we used to call in the accounting world was privilege creep, right? Like, you start off one department, you move to a different, but no one ever goes back and does any kind of audit or assessment of whether or not you still need those permissions. And there's been a few times in my auditing days where we would catch people who had things like access to accounts receivable and accounts payable, so they could create invoices and turn around and pay them. So you run across issues like that where you may not, a lot of times people have access, not malicious, but like, why would they need access to both, and why were they ever given access to both? So being able to audit that, look at that, determine whether or not you have conflict of permissions or conflict of access is critical in maintaining like that zero trust and least privilege access network, right?
exactly. And with the new Copilot and the other capabilities, it's like so easy. A person doesn't need to go hunting, right? You just ask something and suddenly it's putting in all this other information and giving you, which it could be pulling information in spreadsheets and documents, maybe in the finance team SharePoint site, which you didn't expect that person to have when they moved away from finance into maybe into sales or into the HR or a different department. So this brings me to like one of the hero features in identity governance, which is entitlement management, right? So you can create access packages for various roles and projects to ensure that the right users have access. And here you can see one of the key capabilities, which is lifecycle workflows that you get with the Entra Suite. So you can now define and say, depending if this condition happens, say a user joins and their department is now finance, as soon as the metadata changes, run this automated workflow, which removes access to those access packages, the SharePoint sites and applications, and move them from whatever the other department into what this new department requires. So you can set it all up once, and that's it, right? You're ensuring there's least privilege. The moment the person's department or in the HR system it changes, it flows through and sort of removes access, gives them birthright access to the minimum things they need, and then allows them to go in and request for access that they need, right? So this is a key capability that you only get with the Entra Suite, which is part of ID governance. But with Entra Suite, you get that capability tied in together here. You can also use with ID governance, all this machine ML-driven insights. So if people have been, in the organization for a while, and we notice that they're not accessing a particular site and so on, ID governance will actually tell you, hey, does this person really need access? They've not accessed this site, and it will recommend for you. So you can see here, there's a recommendation given, right? For this user, he's in a different org as well. If you see, he's in a different part of the org, he still has access to this SharePoint site, and they've not been active as well. So we can give this to the person who's making the decision, so they don't need to just get a list of names when you're doing the access reviews. And I used to work in enterprise org where every quarter we just get this huge list of these are the people who have access to these sites. Do they need access or not, right? And you're stuck going through like 40 or 50 entries and you don't really know, right? You just scan through and you don't know what's happening, whether that person still needs access. Whereas with ID governance, we make it really easy for the user. We reduce the cognitive overload for them and say, like, Jesse is in this other department, there's low affiliation, they're not even part of this org. And we've noticed they are inactive as well. So, you should deny access to them and remove that access. So it prompts and guides you to make sure you have least privilege so they can, come back and, request access if they really need access. So that's a capability that ID governance and Entra Suite does. Now, this is the neat part where we combine all of the features in Entra Suite, right? Now, if you get ID governance, you only got the governance piece. If you got Entra private access and internet access, you only got the zero trust part of it. But now we can combine all of that and say, does this person really need access to these applications, right? And if they're in the different departments, you can now apply the zero trust access to those flows as well. So you can say, compliant malicious sites, nobody needs access. That's an easy one. You can block, which is what most solutions do today. They just do this very basic thing. If it's malicious, block. Anything else, just let people access, right? It's a one size fits all. But now you can say, okay, only allow the marketing team to access all these social websites from their device, right? And this is the kind of thing that you can do with Entra Suite out of the box. You don't need to do complex integrations like you have to do with other solutions where you're getting different vendors for identity, different ones for zero trust, and trying to cobble together a solution. With the unified conditional access engine, you get this all out of the box. Right, and you can say, okay, if you're in a particular project, because you work with customers outside, you can get access to certain applications, and even that can be time bound with ID governance. You can control that. You can control what sort of GitHub repositories people have access to, and even when they're accessing other tenants, right? You allow known tenants, block anonymous tenants. So with ID governance and zero trust access together, you get this really controlled way of doing least privilege access in a more granular way than you could have ever done before.
Yeah. And I think too, like when one of the biggest concerns with the shift to more cloud-centric applications is like shadow apps, right? Like apps we can't control. We tell people, we write it in policies, we say, oh yeah, you can't use any unapproved apps, but there's no enforcement to the policy.
Exactly.
We run into a problem. This is specifically like when we used to work with the DoD clients, right? Like you can't save CUI outside of these specific areas that we have control. But if you're not restricting access to Dropbox or Google Drive or whatever, what's stopping someone from moving classified or protected information into those unprotected services? Like that's a huge no-no. So like you have to have enforcement and like a written policy stating that you're not supposed to do it. So this is the enforcement piece of that, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. It was all on trust, right? You tell people, but then most folks don't even know what the rules are, the policies, right? It's just a site they access. And here you can guide them to, do the right thing, and you get full visibility as well, right? And you get it in one pane. It's not the identity team seeing something and the security, the networks team seeing something else. You can now see all of that in one place and define the policies in one place. So let's shift gears on improving the user experience, right? So while you're making your organization really secure, that's all good. But how do we improve the user experience? Usually it's been a trade-off, right? Like if we improve security, then the user experience is not that great, right? And there were trade-offs, and Entra Suite really helps improve that. So we now provide like a seamless experience for users, whether they are remote or in the office, right? So they don't need to think about the VPN or connect to VPN, etc. You just deploy the agent and it's always on and it's protecting the identity of the user, right? So they don't need to think of, hey, I'm outside, I need to now connect to the VPN. Maybe they're in the middle of a call and then they say, okay, connect to the VPN and the call drops. They need to reconnect again and so on. So with the Entra Suite, all of it together, we have this whole self-service option, right? You can go in and say, I need access to this. and then you can apply conditional access policy that says even to like a file share, you can see we are applying MFA just for someone to be able to access a file share, which you couldn't do before, right? So Entra Suite now brings in this capability for local file shares, legacy applications, which don't even need to know about Entra ID. You can now apply strong MFA. You can even use authentication strength and all those capabilities. Say maybe they should only allow phishing resistant access for this, and you can do a point in time flow, right? So Entra moves from just being a web-based conditional access policy engine for web-based apps to a policy engine that you can apply to everything, right? Even on-prem, even to an RDP solution, access to Windows servers, you can apply conditional access policies now. And you also get access to Entra Verified ID when a customer gets Entra Suite, right? So this is a really unique solution where you can now have people do a real-time face check. You can ask them to have the app installed, and maybe it's when they call the support or help desk, or as a new starter joins in, etc. We have a very privacy-focused solution which can map the person against the government-issued ID, and they do a real-time scan, and we can verify the user before they get in to whatever application, right? So you can decide which app needs to be protected that way. You can say it's only maybe when they are doing like a privileged work, or maybe when they call the help desk, you can do this sort of verification. So this is a high assurance, right? Like if someone just takes the token and replace, and you do this step in the middle, now they need to open the app and do show the face scan and do a check. But there's no one looking at them. It's just going to be, we use machine learning to map and verify the face scan that was done with the government issued ID that they initially uploaded as part of the onboarding flow, right? So a proper verification check and no humans involved. Entra Suite, like for the first time, includes this capability as well. So you don't need to like buy all these different solutions and put them together. With Entra Suite, you get this included, right? So it'll help, a lot to do with reducing help desk costs, remote employee onboarding, misuse of password recovery fee capabilities. All of that can be used with the verified ID. And then we can reduce a lot of the on-prem footprint, right? So all of the legacy security solutions that you have, that don't really scale as you move to a cloud-first solution, and they're also expensive to maintain. They need a different skill set, manage, and you need to keep upgrading them every few years, right? And there are vulnerabilities every time that you need to, patch and keep them up to date to be on top of that. So you can reduce a whole bunch of your security on-premises footprint with the capabilities, right? So with Entra Suite coming in, you have the Entra Internet Access, private access, your old on-prem identity governance solution. You can just get rid of a whole bunch of those servers that customers might be having, and move to a complete cloud-based, modern, built for the web identity solution with Entra Suite. So that's sort of the selling point for Entra Suite. So Entra ID P1 is a requirement, right, for customers to get the Entra Suite. So they need to have P1, and then usually if you're buying these separately, this is the sort of the price points that you get, right? In terms of the retail pricing, you need to get private access, internet access. Now you can buy them separately. You can pick and choose what you want or don't want. But see, if you tie it all together, you're getting like a 45% discount if you go with the Entra Suite, right? So it's only like $12. So by the time you add, two of these, you're already like, if you want ID governance and private access, you get all of the others thrown in for you, right? So it's a really neat deal for Entra Suite, and we already seeing so much demand from customers who are trying it out and moving to it, because they get this value of one simple solution. Right. So in your first 90 days, right? So as customers like who get this, right, get the Entra Suite and deploy it, in the first 90 days, they can deploy so much and they can retire so many of the legacy solutions that they have. They can conduct access reviews to all of their systems and move to this one simplified solution and a single pane of glass across all of this.
So that's
Right. So
actually, oh, sorry, Merle. That's actually a very valuable point that you just made. And I want to make sure that I'm calling it out for you. So it only, you save 45% buying Entra Suite, and you get to retire all these legacy services that Entra Suite takes care of. So there's actually more cost savings in the long run once you validate all the other services that you no longer require to do, because Entra Suite covers it all.
exactly. Right. So when it's time for renewal, you like if customers work out, when their renewal is for those different, like all these different things they're using today. And in this new world, right, where cost is sort of a very important factor in everything we do. If you replace all those solutions, you can work out what the cost is for each of those, right, and look at when the renewal is coming up, and it just makes sense with the Entra Suite to start piloting it, trying it out, and start retiring each of the solutions, so you don't need to pay them when they come up for renewal.
Yeah, because I can tell you, trying to, from the MSP's perspective, like trying to manage multiple legacy like SSL VPNs, especially with the amount of 0 days that come out for VPNs, like if you can have like the continuous like patching, right, that comes on with like this with Entra Suite, where like Microsoft's doing all the patching, they're handling all the workload. You don't have to manage as much security like attack surfaces like you would with a traditional SSL VPN, and you can granularly grant access to services and applications, right? Like it's almost like a no-brainer. Like that's the way you should be going, especially if you have a lot of remote workforce, because managing all that or having that centralized point of failure that is like a singular piece of hardware sitting in a closet somewhere, right? Like Entra gets rid of all that. So you have better resiliency, you have, reduced attack surface, you have less management. Like it seems like it's a no-brainer across the board, right?
Yeah. I'm just going to call out a quick time check. We got about 10 minutes left to the top of the hour.
Cool. Yeah, and so I'm actually done. I'm happy to take questions or any other queries that you have. There is a special pricing if any of the customers on E5, on ME5. Right now, Microsoft is also offering a special pricing because they already sort of paid for ID protection. So it's not the full Entra Suite pricing. Right now, there's a special offering that they have, so they can reach out to you on any customer that wants to make use of that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Merle. If you're at the end, I'll if you have a question out there for all the attendees, please feel free to drop in the chat, or I'm not sure if you can unmute yourself, but fire them off. If something comes after you get off the phone and something happens later today or tomorrow, next week, and you have a question, please reach out to your account manager here at Sherweb, or send a message into partners@sherweb.com if you don't have an account manager, and we'd be happy to answer those questions. Just make sure you're asking for Roddy Bergeron. No, I'm kidding. Ask for Azure team, and we can certainly provide you with the services and the support that you need. And just to recap, if you're looking to get started on Entra ID, Microsoft Azure 365, and you're just not 100% sure where to go, please reach out to your account manager, or again, partners@sherweb.com, and just let them know what you're looking for. And they're fantastic at bringing the right SMEs on the line to make sure that we get the answers out to you that you need. So if there's no more questions, last slide Akila brought up. I think it's very valuable to talk about our pro services team.
Yeah. Shout them out. Shout them out, Jason. Shout out the pro services team.
Shout out to pro services. We've got engineering on staff. So there's a whole concept about, or thought process around, do I go out and hire people to start, to have the expertise before I go out and get opportunities with my customers? And I would say to some degree, you might want to do a little bit of both, or feel free to lean on Sherweb. We are here. We've got your back. Again, we got a team of trained, certified Azure technologists. We've got project managers. We've got engineers. We've got pre-sales on the front side. So we're here to basically just put a nice warm blanket around you and get your customer on the phone. And your success is our success, and we really want to do whatever we can to get you there. And if you're not comfortable, not sure what that looks like, and I'll shut and zip in a sec. Talk to our team. Let us know that you're concerned, and we can start to find ways to be able to show you and make that concern go away and build trust.
Yeah, and also too, like I want to plug this too, because it's something new that Pro Services is about to announce, or I know we've been working on it internally. But like if you're struggling with Copilot use cases or getting tenants ready around security for Copilot, like Pro Services is starting to work with partners on helping that. So like that's been a big issue with us with Copilot. It's like everybody gets excited, they want to use it, but then they go, what can I do with it, or what's my use case around it? So like getting buy-in, helping get Office 365 tenants secure and ready around things like least privilege access and reduced permissions and zero trust access. Like that's part of Pro Services too. They'll be rolling that out relatively soon, if not already.
Yeah, and I can throw out like just a little testimonial on the Copilot front. I like to be an early adopter of technology, but there were many people at Sherweb that got into Copilot before I did. But today, I love Copilot. I use it multiple times throughout the day. Like I would be lost if they took my Copilot away, honestly. We're eating. I guess the point is we are eating our own dog food. So I might be a bad visual, but we have 365 set up. We have Azure set up. We have Copilot set up. We have Entra ID Suite set up here at Sherweb. We are consuming what we're talking about, and we're encouraging you to do the same. And sometimes starting within your own organization is the best way to share the experience and to get interest out to your customers.
Yeah, I like to use the term "drink your own champagne," Jason, instead of eat your own.
That's better.
It's better connotation, but yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's my slide. So on my side of things, right, like on the security side, we're fleshing out our security line card in the upcoming months. So keep your security for passwords, checkpoints coming in, keep it, backup software, and use secure and hackware for cybersecurity awareness training. If you haven't checked out our cybersecurity guide, at an educational webinar like last week, we had Dustin Bolander with Beltex Insurance came in and explained on the insurance side of things how that works whenever you're dealing with subrogation or incident response. Like what does that look like from the insurance perspective? We went over like coverage, how do you figure out coverage? So that's available in the in our video content on, I think, on YouTube and in our Sherweb portal. And then also we did produce a Copilot readiness guide, so you can reach out to myself or if you're a Sherweb partner, your account manager, and I can get you a copy of like the 20 questions you should ask your partners before you deploy Copilot. So to help you determine, what's the use cases of, are you using conditional access policies or continuous evaluation policies? What are you deploying via Intune? Are you only allowing Intune enrolled devices to access your Office 365 tenant? Like a lot of stuff that Meryl talked about today around zero trust access and least privilege access, like those kind of questions you should be asking to help gauge how ready your partners or your clients are for onboarding Copilot. And, do you have to do a lot of work around things like DLP, where you can actually help produce like some Copilot readiness projects to get partners or clients ready for Copilot. And then while I have the mic, I do want to shout out Meryl's LinkedIn page. So if you're not following Meryl on LinkedIn, please do. It's a wealth of information. And it was a few months ago, Meryl, that's why I learned that Microsoft had actually started letting third-party vendors integrate in for MFA, because they'd stopped doing it for a while because of some trust issues. And then I learned from a post someone shared from you that now you could integrate your own MFA providers. You didn't have to just use Microsoft Authenticator or Microsoft MFA. So like you saved me a lot of headache with some partners on that post. So if you're not following Merrill on LinkedIn, please do. There's a wealth of information around Intra. And you just announced, or you do have an Intra newsletter, right? I just signed up for it before the webinar started.
Yeah, I share at least like one new tip on Intra on my LinkedIn and different socials, but sometimes the social algorithms like show or don't show things. So I started the newsletter where like every week I send out any new product features, things that others are sharing, tips and articles, blog posts, podcasts, all around Entra, and then I include everything that I publish for the week in there as well. So you get it straight to your inbox every weekend.
I'm gonna pop it in. Intra.news is the
yes.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was going to jump in and before Roddy there stole my thunder. I was going to introduce that if you go to merrill.net, MERILL.net, you'll find links to all the great things that this fine gentleman is doing out there in the marketplace. And I just, I commend them today. Merrill, I found you on LinkedIn and harassed you for a while to, come to one of these webinars. Actually, it was because I saw you on a webinar with our competition too. So I was like, damn it, if he can do it over there, he can do it here too.
Yes.
So thank you so much for gracing us with your presence and being a champion for all things Entra ID at Microsoft. We so value all that you're doing. And hopefully this is the first of many, many webinar updates on the wonderful things around Entra ID Suite at Microsoft that you'll be able to share with us. So with that, thank you very much, sir. Greatly appreciate it. Finally, I just want to Finally, I just want to reach out and say, go to sherweb.com/partners to become a partner. If you have any questions, reach out to your account manager or reach out to partners@sherweb.com or 1-855-253-3213. Follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. We're here to help your life be easier. Actually, I talked with a business owner this morning and I said, you know what? We're really here to fill your pockets.
Awesome. And just to
thanks.
There is a short survey. So we would appreciate feedback. It just takes 2 minutes. So please fill that in and you'll see that pop up as soon as the webinar is over.
We really appreciate your feedback and everything you have to say to us, whether it's good or bad. So please don't be shy. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Merrill. Thanks, guys.